Good evening and a warm welcome back to another session in the series of Meeting an Expert. As Asia Pacific Institute of Technology, we are, as APIT, known as APIT Sri Lanka, we are honored today to host this event and host this session with our VIP. And we have a lot of connections and roots over here to this gentleman who is on board with us today. And let me now, to start off for the day, warmly welcome all our students who are joining our session today and all the guests who are joining us from different parts of the world. And of course, all our partner university members and students from those universities as well. And in the meantime, our foreign delegates and other diplomats who are joining us from different parts of the world as well. And of course, finally, all the other distinguished guests and viewers. So to start off for the day, let me now invite our chairman of APIT Sri Lanka, Mr. Bandula Godage, to share his expressions along with his wishes. Chairman, over to you.
Thank you, Kaushali. Today is actually it's a great pleasure to welcome Carl here for this important session, with lot of immense experience and lot of good memories with him during his time in Sri Lanka for 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. And he was basically actively participating in Ceylon Chamber, sharing his view, and he's a fun-loving character and easygoing personality, even though he was heading Unilever Sri Lanka. So very warmly welcome you here, Carl, for this important session on behalf of our CEO, our board of directors, and the lecture panel, and the people and the student population. So, as I think, if I'm not mistaken, if you can recall, APIT is a very well-known education institute in Sri Lanka. And more only that, it is for the quality education. And we believe that everyone who is passing out from APIT is having the highest academic excellence. But with the initiative of Dr. Rohanta Tukorala, we want to give them something extra. I mean, get directly involved with the opinion leaders like you. If I'm not mistaken, this is the 58th CEO is talking to our student population. So I again urge all of our students to get the maximum out of it, your nature of caliber and your nature of leaders from one to one. Carl, if you may agree, during our childhood time, we didn't have this interaction and at this level of people. We were going behind, even to our little principal. It was a little longer, distance. So thanks, Rohanta, you are bringing the highest level of opinion leaders, CEOs, for the benefit of our student population. Carl, it is, yes, I know it's a valuable time, but I'm sure you will very happy with the mingling with the students and sharing your knowledge with our Sri Lankan students, and of course overseas students. Sharing knowledge is the biggest happiness as a leader, as a CEO, that we all enjoy. So thank you very much for being with us in spite of your busy schedule. Dr. Anant, over to you once again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman of the Industrial Association of Sri Lanka, Vice President of Nestle, and of course, being Chairman of APIT. It's my absolute honor to introduce a very, very distinguished human being. It's so humble to know that, sir, you have time for a set of kids who are studying for their basic education for their second wave, and it's so nice you being such a strong icon in the African region, taking some time off to speak to them. Cruz is the managing director Unilever, with oversight of the West and the Central African markets, and managing director CEO of Unilever Nigeria, Unilever's operation in the largest economy in Africa. As managing director of the West African, Carl sits on the boards of Unilever Nigeria PLC as an executive director, and Unilever Ghana PLC as a non-executive director representing Unilever. Previously, he was the chairman Unilever Sri Lanka from 2016 to 2019. He has also served the Vice President Customer Development of Unilever Philippines. Carl joined Unilever straight after university in 1992 and has done marketing, and customer development work across home care, personal care, and foods in his years with Unilever. Carl's international experience includes working in Thailand and in India from 2004 to 2009. In Thailand, he was the customer director for Unilever's foods and ice cream business. And in India, he deployed the category management and customer marketing for Hindustan Unilever Limited. Carl returned to Unilever Philippines in 2009 to head the foods and business unit and later took over the customer development function. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Managing Director, West Africa at Unilever, MD, CEO, Unilever Nigeria, Carl Cruz. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you for those very kind words and heartwarming recommendation and introduction from, of course, my colleague until today, Bandola, and of course, Dr. Hanta. Thank you so much. So it's a privilege for me, truly a pleasure to actually share my experience with regards to leading a high-performing organization in this particular new normal that we have. So I'll just quickly share my screen. Give me a minute. Yeah. Is it visible now?
Very clear, Carl.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hanta. So I'll probably take probably 15, 20 minutes just to take you through some of the charts that has been prepared so that I can give you, a good view of the experience I've had so far in leading for high performance in this particular new normal. I think the introductions have been made. So I currently am part of the team here in West Africa. Such a learning experience for me because this is the first time that I am leading 3 publicly listed Unilever operating companies. So I am, still learning at this point in time, getting a lot of different perspectives from the board members who are, of course, executive and non-executive board members. So lots of learning going around at this point in time, especially for myself. I think what has been said a while back in terms of having the very fortunate experience of working in a number of different markets and cultures has actually helped shape me to, where I am today, and having a different and a wider perspective in terms of being able to connect with people and engage with consumers from, different parts of the world. So very, very fortunate to have done this and be given this particular opportunity from or by Unilever. So probably one thing that not many people know, I am a Unilever Lifer. So I am actually on my 30th year of being in the company. So straight out of university, I joined Unilever in the Philippines, and 3 decades later, I'm in West Africa, which is a great, great subcontinent to be in at this point in time. Huge opportunities, but as well, massive, massive learning to be had. Yeah. So that's a short introduction. Yeah. So I think the topic really is passion for, high performance, leading for high performance. I think the very first point that I'd like to make to everyone is we need to provide focus to the organization, especially during these times. Why is that important? Because with technology supporting all of us today, we are able to do a million things at the same time. But providing that focus to the rest of the organization is critical to ensure that we drive resources to value. Yeah, resources of the organization, whether it's people, financial, process capability, brands, being focused to activities which will deliver the best value for the shareholders is such an important thing. That's the first one. Second, in today's environment, we need to be very agile. In a very, very volatile environment like West Africa, where I would describe it as volatility on steroids, this is so important. If we think that India is volatile, yes, it is. But I've been here doing this work now for about 18, 19 months. This is more volatile than South Asia or India. So being able to navigate and having that agility, to course correct basis what the environment throws your way, I think is very, very important. Speed, also an imperative in today's environment. I have this saying coming from a mentor in Unilever. In today's environment, we can be perfect, but perfectly late. Yeah, because others would have beaten you to the punch. Third point, in terms of leading for high performance, would really be having an owner's mindset. Yeah, we have to think like we own the business, and we have to think that we are the head of the organization, like a mother or a father will be to a family. Yeah, you have to go over and above what you usually do to be able to lead for high performance in today's environment. We have to be authentic as leaders, as head of the family, and we have to take care of our people. I think it's very important. It's a very tough balance to achieve, where you are taking care of the health and well-being of everyone, being very respectful, but at the same time, really holding everyone to account to drive superior performance. It's easier said than done. Fourth point will be in terms of accountability for execution and results. I think gone are the days in terms of what we have today, agile working. Gone are the days where resources are tied up to a certain activity all the time. Gone are the days where we expect our employees to be in the office promptly at 8 and will not leave at 5 p.m. We should give them the flexibility to balance, work and personal life. And, a person or a talent pool that has the right balance between both will deliver more for the organization. That's the kind of mindset that one should have at this point in time. Last point would be to have tough discussions when needed, especially with your key stakeholders above you, because as leaders of the organization, your role will really be to protect the larger organization from undue pressure. And usually in the world and environment that I operate in, there is usually some pressure coming from above, which if it seeps through the LT, it can make ways of working very difficult internally in the organization that I am a part of. So those are some key points in terms of passion for high performance. This is a picture of big elephant, and with hounds being able to overtake this particular big elephant. Usually within an organization such as Unilever or Nestle or P&G or any of the big multinational companies, we do have operations where we are quite big in the markets that we operate in. And usually when you are big, you are quite slow to adapt. And the rationale for transformationary leadership to get to high performance is one such environment where you're so big, you've been used to winning all the time, and you're quite slow to adapt to the changing environment. We all know this, we've studied this in the past, but I think very, very relevant to the operation that we have today. So as I said a while back, it's a typical Unilever organization, big business, market leader usually in all categories. We usually have a very good route to market. We're usually the number one employer of choice, and our brands are usually strong because of over a period of time. We're usually in most countries, about 100 years even in some cases. So that's a typical Unilever organization. This is what I wanted to show a while back, the rationale for transformation. Yeah. And the environment where that allowed us to win. So consumers were less informed. We usually, legacy-wise, we are a great marketing and sales organization. Competition in some of the markets we used to operate in was not really that much. And, we usually use scale to be able to win competitively. And of course, in the past, there's hardly any technology to leverage. So rationale for transformation, how we won. And in today's environment, anyone can get disrupted. Yeah. Anytime by anyone. So very, very important to realize this as leaders for today. Why? Because the cost of entry is now not as expensive as in the past. Yeah, we have nimble supply chains that allow you to actually produce products from, from other markets, China, Vietnam, India, that will allow one to actually compete in a very competitive way in the markets that we all operate in today. Second would be, nowadays, you don't need an army of people to start a business. You don't need 1,000 salesmen. You don't need 100 distributors. You don't need 50 warehouses to do this, because it's all online, and we've seen a lot of examples. So today, when you lead for high performance, you have to accept the fact that you yourself as leaders, you have to disrupt yourself or be disrupted. Yeah, I think very important point to make. Hence the need to again reimagine the organization. So in my recent assignments, we had to do this because we wanted to unlock the growth potential of the organization by repurposing the entire structure, cost base, create an organization that is much more agile, lean, and more importantly, digitally enabled. Yeah. What we did at the time was an end-to-end process review to determine which of the processes should be eliminated, which of the processes can be automated, and which of the processes can be extended, let's say, from a bigger Unilever market where the resources were in place and the capability was very good. Yeah, so that was the scope of the transformation at the time. This is an actual example in terms of, before the transformation journey, which took about a year and a half to where we are today, in terms of reduction of the structure, about 25% reduction in terms of FTEs or full-time equivalents, 100% reduction in terms of third-party support groups. And our overheads at the time was the outlier in the region. And now, post this particular exercise, we are well within the benchmark rate in terms of being the cost structure. Why is that important? Because in today's environment, your cost structure should be at a place, at the level where consumers are willing to pay for. Yeah. And if you can see in the middle of this particular chart, we looked at 142 processes, and we determined that of those processes, 3 should be taken out because it's redundant. 38 should be simplified. 75 were automated, and 26 were combined to make it a bit more efficient. Yeah, so that's the kind of work that was done. And today, this particular organization is doing so well with all of the challenges it faced in the past year and a half, 2 years, where COVID-19 hit and some other external factors made it a bit more difficult. They continue to thrive. I'm doing it again here in Ghana and Nigeria, and later on in Francophone Africa because of a different reason. In the past, it was I had to move the organization because we were known to always be the best, the biggest, the market leader, but people were catching up. So we had to make the organization a bit more productively paranoid, if I may use the term. And here today in Ghana, Nigeria, it's a totally different story. We were big ones because of a lot of missteps in the past. We've had a very, very tough couple of years. So the end goal is the same, but the reason for doing it is a lot different. But end goal is to be future fit. The end goal is to be more agile, use data in most, if not all, of the business decisions, and to encourage, learning again as an organization, as individuals. I think we have to be prepared to unlearn what we know and learn what we need to know to move this particular needle. So I think I'll end there and be open for conversation and questions.
Thank you very much, Carl. I mean, fantastic insights.
There.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much. Carl, I mean, it's lovely how you conceptualize the whole um, uh, thought process in such a short time of like 15 minutes. I really appreciate. Just a quick Q&A. Carl, whenever you operated in many markets um, in the world, and whenever you go to a country, what's the first thing you do?
Okay, I think it's a brilliant question. I would have wanted to say something about this in the charts. So whenever I move into a new market, a new role, or a new position, the first thing I always do is to make sure that the fundamentals of that role are in the right places. Because without the fundamentals being in place, you won't be able to build on it and grow. That's the first thing I really do from a work perspective. From a personal lens, I think it's important for one to manage the expectations, because if you're going to a new market and be part of a new culture and assimilate yourself with the population, you cannot expect the country, the culture, the people to adjust to you. You're a visitor to that particular country. You should be the one to adjust. I think that has helped us tremendously in all of our moves, from Philippines to Thailand to India to Sri Lanka, and now to this wonderful set of countries in West Africa. I think that's very, very important.
Carl, when you came to Sri Lanka, I mean, I know that you worked in India before, so I mean, there was some kind of similarity. But what did you see clearly from a consumer angle? What kind of changes did you see? Because we being Sri Lanka, sometimes we don't see the changes. I mean, if you look at the graduates of Staffordshire University, some of them are working in all the top garment apparel companies like the MS and Brandix, which I'm sure you know, and then others are working in all the top telcos. Then you have the multinationals like the Levers and the Nestle's and the Reckitt's of the world. So our array varies from that to the banks and the financial industry, and of course the hotel sector. So what is the key change you saw in Sri Lankan culture from very outsider view?
I think number one, from a cultural lens, what really struck me at the very beginning are the culture in Sri Lanka, and for me it's a very good thing, is not yet so westernized. If you ask me, the need and the want to be part of the family, the respect given to elders, the way one another is treated with utmost respect, I think is superb. Compared to India, which has in a way been a bit more westernized compared to Sri Lanka, I think it's a strong character of the country, Dr. Rohanta. So that's one thing that has really struck me. The families first, respect to elders. I hope we do not lose that in Sri Lanka, because when we become a bit too westernized, especially coming from a culture that is deeply rooted in religion, sometimes it's quite hard to manage as a country. The other thing would be, I think, from the way we engage with one another, we celebrate, the way we eat, the way we drink is very similar to how we would do it in the Philippines as well. So, like for religion is also as good, but Philippines has also moved in a different way. But I think Sri Lanka, something that should be kept, if you ask me, Dr. Anta.
Carl, how do you look at this whole impact of the pandemic? Because, I mean, from one side, you see a huge disruption that happens at the consumer end. And then you see that same disruption that obviously the organizations have to do or have to go through and experience. And if they don't, they are not in sync with the consumer. So, I mean, I'm sure, all your experience that you have had in markets you got to look at it absolutely afresh in this new job, and you suddenly find that even if you take the academia, Carl, we see that the guys who used to study all the books in the world and all the theories in the world are now not holding ground because there are new theories that are emerging. So you suddenly find that whole experience curve and the whole knowledge bank, you're starting from zero. Am I right in what I'm saying? And how do you kind of have to start from zero to rebuild this whole knowledge bank? And what do you do as one of the top leaders in the African region?
So I'm still working on it, Dr. Hanta, but I think to give you a perspective in terms of what we are in today, in the past, the level of information that the world takes in is doubled every century. Now this level of information, I think, is doubled in less than 2 years. Yeah, in the past, the average lifespan of any company would be more than a century. Today, it's, I think, down to 17 years only, because if you lose the relevance, then you lose out in the marketplace. As leaders across the organization, and as we all are, in today's environment, what's very important is to always be very curious. We have to be like children again, where we pester our parents. Mommy, daddy, why is this like this? Why is this like this? Why is this like this? We have to be very curious because the learning, one, should never stop. And in today's environment, the learning should really be even quadrupled. Yeah. I did say it in my short presentation. We have to unlearn what we know to be able to acquire the skills and capabilities required to be able to remain relevant in today's environment. Yeah. So what I usually do when I come into a new market is I have reverse mentors, or usually younger people, not necessarily with the organization, but really from the academe, because it helps me, get a feel for, the pulse of the country, especially the younger generation, because in Africa, it's one of the continents with the youngest population, and you have to remain relevant to them. Much more important from a context of Unilever, where historically, tendentially, we have been in markets for over 70 years. And sometimes, there's a legacy behind it, but if you don't refresh the way you engage with consumers and get stuck in the past, then you will lose out. Like here in Nigeria, we will be 100 years in 2023. So you have to be careful. So I think you have to remain to be curious, disrupt yourself, be prepared, and be prepared to work in an environment where it's not hierarchical. I think that's the biggest challenge, where value addition should not always come through a direct vertical line, but should come from anywhere and everywhere across the organization. So that's the kind of ways of working that one should be able to imbibe in today's environment.
We see a lot of Sri Lankan companies. As you know, we have a foreign currency challenge, and given the kinds of issues that happen to the whole supply chain, we have a lot of Sri Lankan companies wanting to come and invest in Ghana. One of my friends, actually, from a CEO of a business company, a business manufacturer, who one of the top 1 and 2, they went to Ghana last week, and he came and said, Ranta, it's just like Sri Lanka 15 years back, 17 years back. What's so special about Ghana, Carl?
I think if you compare Ghana to the rest of West Africa, in terms of security, it's a lot more stable. Yeah, because Nigeria, I'm sure you guys have heard, we have security issues, related to Boko Haram, terrorists. In fact, on a weekly basis, I have twice a week calls on R only, just to be able to ascertain the security situation in certain parts of Nigeria. In Francophone Africa, which is made up of about 15 countries, there are countries with pockets of security issues as well. In Ghana, it's not there. So that could potentially be one of the main reasons why people would want to invest in Ghana if they're taking a look at the West African subcontinent of Africa, Dr. Rohanta. That could be the reason behind it.
Carl, how is the vaccination programs that are in the African region as against the countries that you have a little bit of exposure, like for example, Sri Lanka, we are now at about a 62% vaccination rate, and over 60s are getting their third boost from today. How is that part of the world when it comes to vaccination?
So within a West Africa perspective, vaccination rates are still below 10%. So that's the hard fact about it. But fortunately, the subcontinent and even the whole continent of Africa, Dr. Rohanta, has not been impacted heavily by COVID-19. If I take a look at the number of the occupancy rate of hospital beds, of ICU, it has never peaked. Of course, the countries are testing not very high numbers, but when we test in Unilever, which we test weekly, the positivity rate is actually below 1%. So for the whole of West Africa, Dr. Rohanta, over 2020 and 2021, the highest number, so first foremost, we have not lost anyone to the virus here in West Africa across 15 markets. Number two, the highest number of colleagues, family members, and third-party suppliers that have been infected in a given week was about 112, if I'm not mistaken. And this was during the first wave. And everyone was asymptomatic. We have not had, we've only had 2 cases across the 15 markets where we had to isolate them. So in that way, the subcontinent has been very fortunate to not have been severely impacted by COVID-19.
Moving to another area of discussion, Carl. So what it actually means is that the real impacts that our part of the world have seen because of the pandemic has not actually been experienced by the African region. I mean, would that be like kind of fair to say?
Slightly. So I think the impact in country has not been that severe compared to, for example, the Philippines. In the Philippines, we had cases upwards of 20,000 infections a day. Yeah. Positivity rate reached about 25%. I know in Sri Lanka, it went to as high as 35% positivity. Here, the positivity rate has been low. So from that lens, not as impacted. What has impacted the subcontinent is the fallout of the impact of the virus in other markets, India, China, and even Europe, where we get a lot of our raw materials from. Yeah, so that has the negative impact. So we're feeling that brunt as we speak at this point in time because we all are experiencing this. If you do need products coming out of China, the cost of being able to secure one today probably would have doubled from last year.
Carl, I mean, if a youngster were to ask you, I'm just doing my master's program. I want to kind of look at a future very strong. But then I find that the whole world is challenged. The inflation is up almost 30% in the markets like the US. There's a food shortage looming in many countries. There's absolute chaos when it comes to planning. I get up in the morning and I find the policy that was taken yesterday doesn't hold ground. what advice would you give a youngster? How do you manage yourself? How do you lead yourself? What advice, Carl, could you give?
I think number one, never stop learning. Whether you are young or my age, 30 years in the company, you have to be prepared to unlearn what we all know. It's easier said than done because for me, for example, I like structure. So first is never stop learning, continue learning in whatever way or form. Second advice is be prepared to let go of your way of working. I like structure a lot. I like governance meetings. I like regular calls, regular meetings with my LT. But in today's agile way of working, that's going away. And I felt uncomfortable in the beginning, but seeing how the team has responded, being more faster decision making, it has given me back my a bit of comfort, because in the past I said no, I will never agree not to have any governance meetings. I will never agree to let go of certain meetings that I have. But in the agile way of working, where every week you meet and discuss what are the challenges, what do we need to do, you can actually do away with those meetings because the end goal is always going to be achieved. So that's the second one, learn to let go. First is never stop learning, be curious. And then third is really engage the people around you, whether it is consumers, whether it's your team members, because you learn a lot by simply talking to one another, and not be close-minded in terms of having different perspectives. I think it's one of the blessings that I have received, being able to work in in different markets. It gives me a different, wider perspective on how to view things and accept the fact that sometimes my way is not the only way.
Carl, we know that there's a huge supply chain issue.
Yes.
With regard to where the containers are stuck in the
Yeah.
US, and you have a huge supply chain issue when it comes to, as you say, the raw materials. And now we see there is a huge shortage of gas all over the world. How do you read all these challenges?
I think it's here to stay, at least for the next 2 quarters. And maybe in the next 3 quarters even. So from my lens, we are preparing for the worst case scenario. In terms of inflation, this is what we would call a once in 2 decade type of inflation. The last time we were able to see this probably was 2011, thereabouts, globally. So you need to be able to price yourself properly, otherwise you don't have the economic discipline to continue the business, because continuity will be impacted. Second, the need to really focus, Dr. Rohanta, because like Unilever, we have a slew of brands. Now you really need to focus your energy. What raw materials will you place in that container van from China or from India? Yeah? It should be raw materials that will help you produce your core SKUs, which delivers 70% of your turnover. You have to let go tough decisions of smaller cells, smaller brands. But if you don't do that, then you lose both your core business and your tail. So tough decisions need to be made in terms of prioritization and focus.
Carl, how do you see the next 6 months panning with regard to consumer purchasing?
It will be severely impacted because if you can see the CPI, the indices, it's going south. So companies that will be able to offer the best value proposition to its consumer base will win out. But definitely inflation will continue to be on the high side. And we have to always be true to consumers where we offer them the best value, something that will really help them, turn the tide or sustain up until we get out of this particular period, Dr. Hanta.
So would that also include managing your above-the-line media, or does organizations of your caliber say that no, be the time the best to build brands and we must invest because competitors doesn't have that kind of muscle, so you leverage while everybody's cutting down, but your top companies.
I think whether small, medium, or large size organizations, I think we should never let a crisis go to waste. And we are definitely in crisis mode. So this particular crisis can help you get your cost structure in the right space or in the right place. Because we should thrive in an environment where there is less resources to be able to manage the business. So I think managing the inflation will have to be a combination of obviously price increases, but as well savings initiatives across each and every line of the P&L. I did mention it. Your cost structure should be one that is going to be, from a consumer lens, affordable. Because if you outprice yourself, then you'll lose market share. So your cost base should be top of class or even world class in the markets that you operate in. So my suggestion is, don't let this crisis go to waste. Do a full review of your P&L, all facets of the cost lines challenge, and make sure that what you're charging the consumer is what he or she is willing to pay for.
How do you look at new product development and launches? Do you feel that this is a good time to look at innovation, to drive innovation, or should you look at consolidating your current business?
Depends. If you will have ample supply, so not ample supply, but if that particular mix is really going to be a disruptive innovation, something which is attuned to the environment we are in today, of high inflation, pandemic, lockdown, is it something we can sell online? Then if you can guarantee supply, I would urge you to go for it. But if and only if you have fully supported your core business. See, innovations are great because it delivers incremental sales. But if it takes away from your core, i.e. your core is not fully funded because you're trying to fund an innovation, then it's going to be a bit of a trouble for the company, Dr. Hanta. So my first bit is ensure that your core is secure, properly funded, supply is going to be stable. You have a great mix to land, massive green scores with consumers. You're able to ensure consistent supply. You have extra funds, take a bet on one or two.
I'm getting a question coming from one of our MBA students. He works for a number one or two apparel company. He says, Mr. Cruz, where do you see yourself in the next 2 to 3 years? And what's your next career goal?
So next 2 to 3 years, I'd still like to be here in West Africa because I didn't share it in the chart, but we've set ourselves a vision when I took over in 2020, which is to rediscover the greatness of Unilever here in West Africa. Up until such time that we rediscovered that greatness, I want to be here. The legacy that I want to leave behind is Carl was part of the team that translated the huge opportunities in front of the organization into business reality. Yeah, because it's a 400 million population market. Nigeria is the largest economy in Africa, and whoever wins in Africa in the next decade will win in the global stage together with China and India. So being part of this very exciting but very difficult, challenging, volatile environment is where I want to be still in the next 2 to 3 years. I'm getting massive learnings in managing leading three companies which are publicly listed. Therefore, I think in post that, would move on to either a global role within Unilever or potentially move to another company and be part of the global board. Let's see, but that's the goal. But I'm in no hurry because I really like to see this through.
Carl, what very interesting question coming from she's studying the Staffordshire MBA, but she comes from a more humanitarian background. She's saying, what makes you tick? I mean, for you to have let me read the question. Your track record is amazing. You worked across different markets in the India and the Asian region, and now you have challenged yourself for the African region. What makes you tick?
So I will share my personal purpose in life. My purpose in life is to take a team on an exciting journey to a great destination. So that's my purpose. Again, I'll repeat. To take a team on an exciting journey to a great destination. And what I have in front of me is so exciting. And what we've set for ourselves is really a great destination, because who wins in West Africa wins in Africa, and who wins in Africa wins globally. So that is what makes me tick. And I think the challenge that appealed to me really was to bring to bear the capabilities and the best practices that we have developed, for example, in South Asia, India, Sri Lanka, here where it's relevant. So I'm not going to force fit, but of course, whatever is relevant, we can do, because that's the beauty of working in a Nestle, P&G, or Unilever, where you have the opportunity to deploy best practice from elsewhere in a relevant market to the market you're operating in. So it appeals to me, what I'm doing now. Otherwise, you won't be happy being here.
Very interesting question coming from a guy who works for British American Tobacco. He's saying, sir, many people like to succeed in their local markets and they take positions in developed countries, like the European markets, and then they would come back to the Asian markets because they see the consumer in a different innovative spirit. What made you not take opportunity in a developed market? Very interesting question.
Yes, I've been asked that several times as well. The footprint of Unilever globally, one of the main reasons why it continues to perform as a global company, is such that we are more biased in terms of footprint, but not preference, in terms of developing and emerging markets. India, China, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, Latin America, very strong. So I think that particular footprint has rubbed off on me as well, where it's so nice to work in markets where, because I'd rather work in a market where there are more customers that are underserved to serve, rather than a developed market where you only deal with 4 supermarkets, for example. It's much more uplifting for me to work in a general trade environment, because you see the work and the brand's role in uplifting the livelihood and the quality of life of people in general trade, for example. That to me is for me personally much more rewarding than working in a developed market where you only deal with a few customers. That's one. Second, especially in today's world where technology data can help unlock massive growth for everyone in the developing world, I think for me, there's no place but to be here at this point in time.
Carl, it's beautiful this chatting with you, and I promise to let you go at 7:30 because your secretary said that you have another meeting. I know it must be really tough handling such a large portfolio, but it's so beautiful to have given your time to a set of youngsters, and I think it's actually an honor for Sri Lanka to have had your skill set and your service. But my final question, sir, going back to 21 years, Carl Cruz going to start life at Unilever again, maybe. What advice would you give young Carl Cruz at 21 years?
Okay, that's going to be tough. Very difficult. But at this point in time, what kind? Start the international exposure earlier. That is what the advice, because I turned down, I remember in 1993, I turned down an opportunity to move outside of the Philippines, which is only a year after my getting into Unilever. And I eventually moved 2002, which is 10 years down the line. I would have wanted to actually move earlier because the perspectives that you gain when you work in different cultures, when you engage with different societies, I think is immense. It has served me in very good stead right now.
Thank you very much, sir. And we'd love to have you back in Sri Lanka.
I miss Sri Lanka. In fact, here, Dr. Ranta, I found a place that serves egg hoppers.
Oh, wow. Carl, sorry, one last question.
Yeah,
what
please.
Do you miss, what do you miss of Sri Lanka?
Food and the arak. I miss really the, I don't know if you know, but there is, we get very good biryani from this hotel that's near Grand Pass. Buhari Hotel.
Buhari. Okay.
Buhari.
Oh, yeah, that's a Unilever haunt.
That I miss.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Carl. And
thank you.
I'll hand over to Kaushali. And thank you sincerely, sir, for spending some time with us. I mean, the learning that we got was actually amazing. I mean, I actually made a few notes here. The first one was be a child again. I mean, it's fantastic lesson. And number two was, you have to prepare to let go, which is a key thing. We don't let go of our old habits. And now, of course, we are forced to do it. And third, of course, use this current crisis to get your cost structure right and get your structure also right. That was a fantastic one.
Never let a crisis go to waste.
Yeah. And of course, the last point was that, through disruptive, if focus on your core markets, and if it is required, only you focus on innovation.
Especially today.
Core
yes.
markets. Yeah. Thank you so much, Carl. Kaushali, over to you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Doctor. Indeed, ladies and gentlemen, that is Mr. Carl Cruz. Let the child live in you and let go when you have to let go. That was a wonderful, amazing notification and a learning for all of us, not just the undergraduates, not just the postgraduates, but everyone in life. Right. So thank you so much for sharing this experience with us. And I'm sure all our students benefited quite a lot from this session. Many information and many experiences that they, or for that matter, any of us cannot take from a book. So that's the beautiful thing about this cross-cultural international learning that we always provide in this platform with the support of people like you. So thank you very much for that timing. And with that, we come to an end of another session, and we will meet back again in another week's time. So until then, do take care of yourselves and good night from Sri Lanka.